I was looking for some books that when I got new carpet and took everything moving. I have yet to find them.
That like she quilted forever, and we got to the point where there was so much rags. We're like, we'll just get this stuff and dump it.
Mhm.
And my mom's like, let me go through there, and I think we pulled out like 26 quilts that were almost done that were folded in the
Right.
bottom and their rags on top. So after that, we went through hundreds of boxes.
Oh, of
Oh,
course.
yeah.
I realized that there was nothing else in there, but
Oh, all right, let's get started. Okay, so we have gone through on last Sunday, we went through the first of the sacrifices, and then on Wednesday, we dealt with the peace offering and the sin offering. And so now we're going to look at the rest of chapter 5 is going to deal with a specific set. And it says, if anyone sins in that he hears a public adjuration to testify, and though he is a witness, whether he is seen or come to know the matter, yet does not speak, he shall bear his iniquity. Okay. So there's two levels of this. We'll deal with the first one real quick. So the first one is if the sin is that he saw someone else do something
And he didn't say that.
and he doesn't report it. Okay, so let's say he sees someone rob from someone and they call for witnesses and he says, no, I'm not going to witness. Then he needs to bring a sacrifice. Okay, or if he touches an unclean thing, okay, whether the carcass of an unclean animal or the carcass of unclean livestock or a carcass of an unclean swarming thing, and it is hidden from him and he has become unclean and he realizes his guilt. So remember that there are a set of, and we kind of talked about this before, there are a set of animals that are considered clean and there are a set of animals that are considered unclean. So understand that when it talks about that, okay, it is not only that he cannot eat it, it's that he's not supposed to touch the corpse of it. Okay, so let's say he's going through his field.
He can scratch a pig behind the ear if it's alive. He can pet the pig if it's alive. But if
I
it's
would
dead,
say probably no, but
Okay. don't
but
touch it at all.
right. Okay.
Okay.
So, but if he, and so in this case, now part of that would be you don't scratch a pig behind the ear without knowing you've done it.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And this one is, and it is hidden from him and he has become unclean. And he realizes his guilt. So maybe.
Clean animal.
So clean animals fall under a pretty significant, there's a few things. So 4-footed animals, they must chew the cud and have a cloven hoof. So goat, sheep, cow, ox, and there's a few others that deer and antelope, I think, are both in that, like deer, venison, all of that. Whenever it talks about it, it brings up a couple of discussions. A horse is unclean because it doesn't have a cloven hoof. It does have a hoof, but it's all in one piece. It's not cloven. A pig has a cloven hoof, but it doesn't chew the cud. Now, there's a pretty important element with that discussion of chew the cud. Only animals that chew the cud are animals that only eat grass or only eat plant life. Because that's actually the what?
Herbivores.
Right. That is the whole point of chewing the cud is they bring the partially digested grass back up and chew it some more. Yes, all nice and interesting discussions. Okay. So when it comes to birds, the bird list is specific. No carrion birds or birds that are meat eaters. So eagles, buzzards, all of that are off limits. Chicken would have been perfect. We talked about this last Sunday about chicken. Chicken would have been on the list. Chicken, turkey, dove, quail, pheasant. Okay. Right. Really, in all fairness, still kind of the list of birds we eat.
True.
And then with a fish, it had to be scaled. It is not completely clear, and I'll say this, a catfish technically does have scales, they're just not the same. But really the ones that are completely off limits are shellfish. No shrimp, no lobster, no crab, no.
That sounds such a barbecue.
All those were off limits. So really, and we kind of talked about this last time, there are three categories. There's unclean, which you were to have nothing to do with. There is clean, which was okay for you to use in your daily. Okay. Now, technically a donkey or a horse, you could, well, and let's be fair, horses weren't really a big thing in Israel either until Solomon. Remember, there is an actual statement from God saying, don't gather for yourselves a lot of horses. So donkey, mule, they would not have been edible, but they would have been used for service. They weren't technically clean. They weren't clean animals to eat. Then you have the animals that were acceptable for worship. So there were animals that were clean that you couldn't use in the sacrifices, like no sacrificing fish. You could eat it, but you couldn't sacrifice it. Now, some of the sacrificial line is much more concrete because it tells you exactly what you can sacrifice and everything. But that there are those three categories for their life. Okay, so the idea is you've come across, and by the way, this is probably what this means. An unclean wild animal. So you come across a lion, a bear, right, it's dead, and you touch it. Or it says unclean livestock. So maybe that's pig, or it could be, you know, a dead donkey, a dead camel. Okay. Or unclean swarming things. So you run into a bunch of bugs that are not clean. Because remember, there's also a list of clean insects.
Is there really?
Yes.
Oh,
Fairly restrictive.
good.
They could eat anything that had a segmented body and the long legs. So cricket, grasshopper.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Locust. Well, remember John the Baptist, that was the main part of his diet. Locust and honey. They're actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Fair. They're better when they're dipped in chocolate, but
What about a frog?
I don't think so.
A lot of people eat frog.
Oh, I love these frog legs.
Those are good, I gotta admit.
They are good.
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that would have been clean for them. I'll do some more research and see, but I don't think so. Okay, so but anyway, it touches something that is unclean is the idea. Okay, or he touches human uncleanness. Okay, so by the way, human uncleanness is a very gentle way of saying human waste.
Yeah.
Okay. Or whatever sort of uncleanness may be with which one may become unclean. So there's a lot of those things. Okay, but he doesn't realize it, but later he does realize it. Now, maybe he realizes it because God isn't blessing him and he, you know, okay. But no matter what, the discussion is unintentionally touches. Okay. Then the next set in this list is he goes, or if someone orders with his lips a rash oath to do evil or to do good, any sort of rash oath that people swear and it is hidden from him, when he comes to know it and he realizes his guilt in any of these, Okay, when he realizes his guilt in any of these and confesses the sin he's committed, he shall bring to the Lord. Okay. So this last one is important here. Okay. A rash oath. I'm gonna, okay. Now, there is a story in the book of Judges that I think fits into this, and it's very interesting to look at. And it really is a rash oath under the discussion of the fall of Israel during that time. Because if you ever read the book of Judges, it is a discussion of the descent of Israel into sin. Okay. I think it's near the end of the book. This guy goes out and he wins a battle. And as he's going into the battle, he makes an oath. If you'll give me this battle, I will sacrifice the first thing that walks out that I see when I come to my home. Okay. So he wins the battle. And I won the battle. And he walks up to his house, and the first thing that comes out of his house to see him is his daughter.
That swore he was. It's pretty messed up.
Now, the story tells that this is not what he does, but this is what this means. If you realize you have made a rash that you should not have made, and you're guilty of making this oath, and that you're going to break this oath because it was rash, then here is the sacrifice you give in this state, in this position. Okay. He shall bring to the Lord as his compensation for the sin that he has committed a female of the flock, a lamb or a goat, for a sin offering. Now remember, we have sacrifices that involve male, and we have sacrifices that involve female. Okay. So he brings it for a sin offering, and the priest shall make atonement for him for his sin. But perhaps he can't afford a lamb. Then he shall bring to the Lord as his compensation for the sin he's committed 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, 1 for a sin offering and 1 for the burnt offering. Okay. Now, this is a very critical element in all of this. Your sacrifice and it's not all of them. Some of them are very specific. But in several of the sacrifices, we find this if he cannot afford. Okay. So if you're extremely poor, a lamb may be beyond your means. So you can still have forgiveness. Forgiveness is for everyone, but there is a cost to it. Okay. Now, the truth is the cost for forgiveness is high. But where this kind of fits into this discussion of Jesus is who pays the penalty for our sin? It's Jesus. It doesn't matter who you are. The payment has already been made. Well, in this case, we have a discussion of the payment will be comparative based on who you are. Okay. So bring them to the priest, who shall offer the first one for the sin offering. And then it gives directions. He shall wring its head from its neck, but shall not sever it completely. Okay. He shall sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering on the side of the altar, while the rest of the blood shall be drained out at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering. Then he shall offer the second for a burnt offering according to the rule. Okay. And the priest shall make atonement for him for the sin he's committed, and he shall be forgiven. Okay. If he cannot afford 2 turtle doves and 2 pigeons, he shall bring as his offering for the sin that he has committed 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a sin offering, somewhere around a quart. I was actually going to look and see what it says. About 22 liters, so more than a quart. Pretty substantial amount. Well, an ephah is 20, so 2.5 liters about. A tenth of an ephah would be 2.5 liters of flour. Okay. For the sin offering. He shall put no oil and no frankincense on it, for it is a sin offering. Now, remember, we talked earlier about the grain offering and said that the grain offering had oil and frankincense in it when it's a burnt offering. Well, this is a sin offering, so you don't do that.
Wanted to keep everything straight.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
Very, very precise and yeah. Okay. So then once again, it says, then the priest shall make atonement for him and he shall be forgiven, and the remainder shall be for the priest, as in the grain offering. Okay. So then verse 14, then the Lord spoke to Moses saying, if anyone commits a breach of faith and sins unintentionally in any of the holy things of the Lord. Okay, so now watch what this one is. This is you unintentionally touch something you're not supposed to in the tabernacle or of the items for worship. Okay, that's literally what this is saying. Sins unintentionally in any of the holy things of the Lord. So maybe during worship you fell asleep. I don't know that that's precise in this, but that's the idea. Okay. Then he shall bring to the Lord as his compensation. Okay. A ram without blemish out of the flock, valued in silver shekels, according to the shekels of the sanctuary, for a guilt offering. Okay. He shall also make restitution for what he has done. Okay. So really, this gives us more of an idea of exactly what he means. He damages one of the pieces that is used in worship. So let's say, for example, that he breaks one of the, he breaks one of the bronze tongs. Okay. Then he is to bring a ram that has a value of what he broke plus a fifth again. Okay, so he is to make restitution. So not only the sacrifice, but also if the ram is not valuable enough, then he is also to pay. Okay. And the priest shall make atonement for him with the ram, and of the guilt offering he shall be forgiven. Okay. So then he goes on and he says, verse 17, if anyone sins doing any of the things that by the Lord's commandment ought not to be done, though he did not know it, then realizes his guilt, he shall bear his iniquity. So this is an important element, this. Not realizing you did it doesn't make you where you're not guilty. Or even not realizing that it was wrong doesn't make you not guilty. That's literally what this is saying. Okay, so he shall bring to the priest a ram without blemish out of the flock, or its equivalent. Okay, so probably what we're meaning is a ram or the birds or the equivalent. For a guilt offering, and the priest shall make atonement for him for the mistake that he made unintentionally, and he shall be forgiven. It is a guilt offering because he has incurred guilt before the Lord. Okay. So let's make sure we dig into this for just a minute. Notice the level of precision in what God considered in this discussion of I'm guilty or whatever. Okay. remember that one of the primary elements of the law of Moses is to say, you cannot meet the standard. Because imagine this, even just this last section. If you do something that the Lord has said you shouldn't do, and you didn't even realize you did it, you're still guilty.
Still guilty.
It doesn't change the fact that you are guilty. Okay. So, chapter 6. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, if anyone sins and commits a breach of faith against the Lord by deceiving his neighbor in a matter of deposit or security, or through robbery. Okay. So, if you have breached faith in the matter of selling or buying or holding money, or I'm going to give you a deposit for, oh, can I borrow your rake? Yeah, but you have to pay me a deposit or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's deceiving his neighbor or through robbery, or if he has oppressed his neighbor or found something lost and lied about it. So now let's make sure we understand. You're walking through the field next to your neighbor's house and you find his tool laying on the ground, and he comes over later and says, hey, I lost my tool. Have you seen it? Oh no. And it's hidden behind that's a sin. Okay.
Let me come out and
Sin
look
today.
for it.
What?
That would even be a sin today.
Uh-huh.
It makes me think of all those people that will steal from you and then help you look for the thing.
Uh-huh.
Whatever it is.
Now, here's the funny thing. And you lied about it because you swore falsely.
Swore falsely. Yep.
In any of all the things that people do and sin thereby. If he has sinned and realizes his guilt and will restore what he took by robbery or what he got by oppression or the deposit that was committed to him or the lost thing that he found or anything about which he has sworn falsely, he shall restore it in full and shall add a fifth to it. So, in other words, if he took something valued at $100, then he would pay back 120. Okay. And give it to him whom it belongs on the day he realizes his guilt. And he shall bring to the priest as his compensation to the Lord a ram without blemish out of the flock, or its equivalent for a guilt offering. And the priest shall make atonement to him for him before the Lord, and he shall be forgiven of any of the things that one may do and thereby become guilty. So please understand that part of this also comes back down to, this is in a lot of ways, what this is dealing with is the discussion of a civil dispute.
Yeah.
I defrauded this person. Well, not only do you have to pay before the Lord, but you've got to repay the person you took from.
Restitution, baby.
Uh-huh. Restitution. Okay. Now, the rest of this chapter is going to deal with some of the specifics for the priests of how they are to do this. So we will go through it real quick. Then the Lord said to Moses, command Aaron his sons, saying, this is the law of the burnt offering. Okay. The burnt offering shall be on the hearth, on the altar, all night until the morning. And the fire of the altar shall be kept burning on it. Okay. So the sacrifices that you put on for each day are to stay there till the beginning of the next day. And there is to be a fire lit at all times.
Somebody's got to watch it.
Uh-huh. Okay. So then, and the priest shall put on his linen garment and put his linen undergarment on his body And he shall take up the ashes to which the fire has reduced. Okay. The burnt offering on the altar and put them beside the altar. So literally what this is saying is each morning,
Gather
the
ashes.
high priest goes in with one of the tools, and it tells that there are tools for this. He would take all the ashes and he would pull them out from under the altar and then put them beside the altar. Then he will go and he will change out of his priestly garments and put on normal garments. And then he will go out of the camp with the ashes. So they would have made something to carry the ashes with. Okay. And he takes it outside to a place that is ceremonially clean, and he puts the ashes there. Okay. So God even prescribes what to do with the ashes from all the burnt offerings.
Take them outside the
Okay.
camp.
So there's an important part of this though. Why is it so important to let them burn all night?
So it fully consumes whatever is on the
So it fully consumes it. They're not just cooking it, they are consuming it.
burning it up.
Okay. So the fire on the altar and it shall not go out. The priest shall burn wood on it every morning, and he shall arrange the burnt offering on it, and shall burn on it the fat of the peace offerings. Okay. Fire shall be kept burning on the altar continually. It shall not go out. Okay. So yes, they would have had somebody tending it even at night. Okay.
Probably Aaron's sons.
That is certainly a possibility. It's also now there's also the possibility, because I know that I'll say it this way. My dad would go in and stock up the fire really well at night, and then would close up the fireplace and all of that, and there'd still be coals in the morning. Probably talking at least once in the evening, putting more wood on. Plus, imagine the fact that you've burned, there's all that animal fat and all of that has been burning on it all day. So it probably would stay burning a while. But anyway, not to go out. So he goes on, he says, this is the law of the grain offering. Okay. So this entire section is specifically for the priests. Okay. The sons of Aaron shall offer it before the Lord in front of the altar. And one shall take from it a handful of fine flour of the grain offering and its oil and all the frankincense that's on the grain offering, and burn this as its memorial portion of the altar, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Okay. The rest of it, Aaron and his sons shall eat. Okay. So the rest of it can be used by Aaron's and his sons. It shall be eaten unleavened. So you cannot make yeast bread with it. And it will be eaten in a holy place. Okay. So notice, this bread is to be eaten in the tabernacle area.
The court area.
Okay. Shall not be baked with leaven. I have given it as their portion of my food offering. It is a thing most holy, like the sin offering and the guilt offering. Every male among the children of Aaron may eat of it, as decreed forever throughout your generations, from the Lord's food offerings. Whatever touches them shall become holy. Okay, now this is important. Doesn't say it has to be eaten that day.
No.
So they would have stored the flour of the grain offerings, probably inside the tabernacle courtyard. And then they would have times where they would make unleavened bread for the priests, for Aaron's sons. Okay. So then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, this is the offering that Aaron and his son shall offer to the Lord on the day when he is anointed. Okay. So now what this is talking about, this is specifically to Aaron and his son's anointing. Okay. So when a new high priest is anointed or a new priest is anointed. Okay. 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a regular grain offering, half in the morning and half in the evening. Now, this is interesting because it shall be made with oil on a griddle. So it is not the grain offering that we talked about earlier, but they are to actually cook the flour into like a tortilla. It's a griddle cooked. Okay. You shall bring it well mixed in baked pieces like a grain offering and offer it for a pleasing aroma to the Lord. The priest from among Aaron's sons who is anointed to succeed him shall offer it to the Lord as decreed forever. The whole of it shall be burned. Every grain offering of a priest shall be wholly burned. It shall not be eaten. Okay. Then the Lord says to Moses again, okay, speak to Aaron and his son, saying, this is the law of the sin offering. Okay. In the place where the burnt offering is killed, shall the sin offering be killed before the Lord. It is most holy. Okay. The priest who offers it for sin shall eat it. In a holy place it shall be eaten in the court of the tent of meeting. Now, remember, there are some of the sin offerings that are not wholly consumed. They are partially consumed, and then the rest is kept. Okay. Well, the priest who offers it gets the portion. Okay. In a holy place it shall be eaten in the court of the tent of meeting. Whatever touches its flesh shall be holy, and when any of its blood is splashed on a garment, you shall wash that on which it splashed in a holy place. Okay, so I'm going to make sure we understand this. With the number of animals that are being killed in offerings, there's going to be blood on garments.
And they gotta have a special holy place. to
Well,
wash.
they do. They have a bronze laver
Oh,
that is for washing. Now, it's not just for washing their clothes, and we don't know whether that's how that works or whether they had a special spot in the tabernacle court for that. But there was a place to wash it. Don't go home
they bloody close.
in your bloody clothes. Okay. So, sorry. The earthenware vessel in which it was boiled shall be broken. But if it is boiled in a bronze vessel, it shall be scoured and rinsed in water. Okay. So the meat that you would use from the sin offering that was for the priest to eat was boiled. So if you boiled it in a clay vessel, then you would shatter the vessel.
Gotcha.
Now, I want to make sure we remind you of why this works that way. And the bronze vessel is just because you can't break one very easy. But the best way to explain this is, have you ever seen at a Jewish wedding the cup thing?
Where they put it under the cloth and step on it?
So do you know what they've done?
Stop.
Do you know what they've done with that cup before?
No,
The bride and the groom have shared it as part of their marriage celebration.
okay.
You know, kind of like what we do in ours, where, you know, they link arms and come back around and they drink.
Yeah,
Well, in Jewish, they share a cup.
okay.
Then they wrap it in cloth, lay it on the ground, and they break it. And the reason why is because it has been used for something so special that it would be wrong to use it for anything common.
Okay,
And so in the same way, this has cooked a holy offering to the Lord. And so we don't want you to take it out, eat it, and then go take it to, and let's be blunt about it, use it as a urinal.
Gotcha, because it was a holy vessel.
So break it.
So break it. Gotcha.
Okay. If it's a bronze vessel, then it's scoured and rinsed in water. Okay. Would not have been fun to scour a bronze vessel that way, but okay. Every male among the priests may eat it. It is most holy. But no sin offering shall be eaten from which any blood is brought into the tent of meeting to make atonement in the holy place. It shall be burned with fire. So now we have to go back to the other discussions. Some of the sin offerings,
They had to go in
The-
and sprinkle.
they had to go in and sprinkle blood on the altar of incense because it was one of the priests had sinned, or one of the leaders of Israel had sinned, or the people as a whole had sinned. If that was the case, then none of that was to be eaten. Okay. But the normal offerings, the priest could eat of it. Okay. So I know this is a lot of very specific sacrificial discussion. And one of the main reasons that we're continuing to go through it is because I think it's important for us to understand the level of seriousness that God put behind sin. Okay. It is absolutely clear that God took all of this incredibly serious. Okay. So let's start chapter 7. We will go just through to the end of this first set of sacrifice. Okay. So chapter 7 says, and this is the law of the guilt offering. It is most holy. In the place where they kill the burnt offering, they shall kill the guilt offering, and its blood shall be thrown against the sides of the altar. And all its fat shall be offered, the fat tail, the fat that covers the entrails, the 2 kidneys with the fat that is on them at the loins, the long lobe of the liver, that he shall remove with the kidneys. The priest shall burn them on the altar as a food offering before the Lord. It is a guilt offering. Then every male among the priests may eat of the leftover. It shall be eaten in a holy place. It is most holy. The guilt offering is just like the sin offering. There is one law for them. The priest who makes atonement with it shall have it. And the priest who offers any man's burnt offering shall have for himself the skin of the burnt offering that he has offered. So notice here's, we have another little bit of deal. So you bring the sin offering, and so if it's a bull or a goat, the skin is worth something. To help keep warm, to make into clothing, to tent, all of that. So they get the hide of the animal too, to use as they need to. Okay. And every grain offering baked in the oven and all that is prepared on a pan or a griddle shall belong to the priest who offers it. And every grain offering mixed with oil or dry shall be shared equally among all the sons of Aaron. Okay. Now, when it talks about sons of Aaron, it means sons, grandsons, great-grandsons. Okay. All the priests. Okay. And then the last one we'll do today. This is the law of the sacrifice of peace offerings that one may offer to the Lord. So now let's make sure we understand the difference here. Every offering in chapter 6 before this has involved some kind of sin.
Yeah.
Okay. The peace offering does not involve sin.
Mine says fellowship
It's a
offering.
fellowship offering. The fellowship offering is an offering where the person goes, I just really love God. I want to give him something. Or I want to have an extra time of fellowship with him is probably the better way to say this. Okay. This is the law of the sacrifice of peace offerings that one may offer to the Lord. If he offers it for a thanksgiving, then he shall offer with the thanksgiving sacrifice unleavened loaves mixed with oil, unleavened wafers smeared with oil, and loaves of fine flour well mixed with oil. With the sacrifice of his peace offering for thanksgiving, he shall bring his offering with loaves of leavened bread. And from it he shall offer one loaf from each offering as a gift to the Lord. It shall belong to the priest who throws the blood of the peace offering. Okay. And the flesh of the sacrifice of his peace offering for thanksgiving shall be eaten on the day of his offering. He shall not leave any of it until morning. But if the sacrifice of his offering is a vow offering or a free will offering, it shall be eaten on the day that he offers his sacrifice. And on the next day, what remains of it shall be eaten. So there's two different things here.
This is the first time they talked about leftovers.
Okay. Well, because this is the only offering that the person who offers it gets any.
Oh, that's.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in all the guilt offerings, the priest may get some, but the person who's giving the offering doesn't get any. This time, what it's saying is, and by the way, this is really an interesting discussion. If you're bringing a peace offering to the Lord, specifically it says about Thanksgiving, you bring not only the animal that you're going to kill, but you bring bread.
Yeah.
Why? Because you're going to be having yourself a feast outside the tabernacle.
It's like having a picnic with God.
Okay.
Kind of fun, actually.
So then it brings up, so the first one is Thanksgiving. So you're being thankful for something God has done for you. But if it's a vow offering, in other words, if it's an offering saying that I'm making a vow before the Lord, I vow to do this, or I vow not to do this. Or if it's a free will offering, just because
I love you.
I love you, God, I'm going to give you a sacrifice. Okay. So, then it says, but what remains of the sacrifice on the third day for the vow offering shall be burned with fire. And then it says, if any of the flesh of the sacrifice of the peace offering is eaten on the third day, he who offers it shall not be accepted, neither shall it be credited to him. It is tainted, and he who eats of it shall bear his iniquity. So to eat it after the time frame that God has designed, then it becomes a sin. Okay. So very, very specific. Yeah. And probably a bit like drinking from a fire hose, but understand that what God is doing is he's setting up a way of worship, and he's setting up an understanding of who he is and what he expects. And as we move forward, much of this points back to who Jesus is and what he has done for us. Okay. But what I will tell you is there are many, many things what we look at in the New Testament that understanding this system that they have built helps us understand. Just like you said, the lambs at the temple, they were setting up for one of these sacrifices. And so it's important to understand them. Okay, we're going to stop right there. So we'll pick up at 7:19 next time.